The next one got a crazy reaction. I want you to go out of your way to see this. If you're a fan of old school ECW, you're going to like when Team 3D returned to Philadelphia here, now as New Japan Tag Team Champions inside of a cage match, taking on Beer Money. 3D is super over. Nobody has the reaction they do here. They're going to brawl through the stands. Fans are going to chant ECW. We've got tables being set up and suplexes on the floor and cage doors being thrown in the face. And it's really a fun match, including a doomsday device. Yeah. 3D hits a doomsday device and the crowd is ready for tables, and they pop big when Bubba tells Devon to get the table, and the crowd starts chanting, "We want fire." Think about that. That's where we are. My goodness. Team 3D gets the win though, just under 15 minutes, 14 minutes and 59 seconds. I guess it's no surprise that 3D is this over in Philadelphia. But when you really think about this tag team division, this is the same company that has the Motor City Machine Guns. We talked about Naito and LAX, but Beer Money, a homegrown act, over like Rover, taking on the hometown favorites in the former Dudley Boys. This is just a no-brainer for pro wrestling on pay-per-view, is it not?
True. And you've said it a second ago. This is hats off to Bubba and Devon. This was so down their alley, but to have it in Philly and their opponents, Bobby and James, it was good shit, pal, as Vinnie Mac would say, or Bruce would say, or others would say. It was very entertaining. Super, super entertaining.
Next up, we've got AJ Styles teaming with Christopher Daniels and Jeff Jarrett and Samoa Joe to beat Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, Booker T, and Scott Steiner. It's a lethal lockdown match where Kurt Angle starts with Christopher Daniels. They're going 23 minutes and 1 second. It's a big match. The Observer gives it 3 stars or 3.5. The Torch gives it 3. What do you remember about this lethal lockdown match here? A lot of talent in there.
Well, and you know, you look at the last 2 matches, well, the last 3, but the last 2, you know, the baby faces are AJ, Daniels, and Samoa Joe, and me and Mick. And on the other side is the Main Event Mafia. And that was the story we had been building, gosh, since October. This was kind of where we charted our course, that we were going to put the Main Event Mafia together. The front line was going to come together. Me and Mick were going to be in this quandary of trying to do the best for the promotion, and of course the Main Event Mafia getting out of bands. But this is what we had built for. And the blow off, again, this was a 6-month blow off, because not to jump too far ahead, but in this one, they weren't sure, is Jeff really gonna stick with these guys? And the finish at the very end brought in a question: am I going to hit Booker, or I'm going to hit AJ? And I cracked Booker and AJ and go on to win. And it was just, it's exactly what we had been building for.
Meltzer had an interesting write-up about this. I want to read to you because I found some of it to be, well, we'll just go with interesting. I want to remind everybody, Steiner used a Frankensteiner off the top on AJ Styles, and the place came unglued. Joe would come in, and this is according to Dave Meltzer, he wasn't over a bit. Nash came out and he was over, but couldn't do much. Finally, Jarrett came in, and the crowd didn't care about him a bit. The top of the cage came down with all the weapons, and it became a weapons match. And there was a spot where Jarrett went to hit Booker with a garbage can, but he moved, and Jarrett hit Styles, teasing the finish. The finish started when Angle climbed to the roof of the cage and Styles followed. They brawled on the edge, each teasing, falling off and dying. We're teasing death here, including Angle suplexing him off the top of the cage. Angle got back in the ring, falling, holding himself on the top and letting go, and he could have easily blown out his knees. Styles jumped off a raised portion of the roof onto the roof of the cage that was gimmicked, and then he went through and fell on everyone. That was crazy. Meltzer would say the crowd didn't care about any of this storyline stuff, only when stars entered and people put their health at risk. And I know that that has become a thing, you know, whether we as wrestling fans or an internet wrestling community want to acknowledge it, but there is this weird thing in all of us that we react when we think there's going to be potential injury, but that level of risk is probably not something you want to get too comfortable with if you're going to have a long career. Talk to me about that, Jeff. You've managed to be one of those rare guys who's been in the business forever, not had any surgeries, but you've been selective on where you've taken risks. But when you're trying to super serve the crowd and you're looking for pops and reactions, it's a slippery slope at times, no?
And I've got a ton of respect for guys that maybe go above and beyond and take those kind of risks. But again, I think at times taking the crazy bump, high risk now, like I think Mick Foley, I'll just use it. It's the first one that comes to my mind. Fell off Hell in the Cell, a calculated risk, and he got carted out, but came back and the carting out, he wove that into a story. So crazy bump, but it was a part of the story. The thing that I'm thinking through now, Conrad, as you say that, is that to take a high risk move for the sake of taking a high risk move, I think you're shortchanging yourself, or maybe taking a shortcut yourself and not really maximizing charisma, promos, storytelling, drama that you can build into the match without doing those. I get it. There's a balance out there, but at the end of the day, thank the Lord that I've had this viewpoint that was ingrained into me. People remember the moments of the emotional attachment, a promo, a 1, 2, 3. Yes, they kind of care how you got there. They do, but they don't. But they remember the emotional attachment as opposed to the guitar solo. I just, that they want to remember the hook of the song or whatever it may be. There's so many different analogies you could bring together, but man, it's a slippery slope, Conrad, because injuries can happen, as we all know, in an instant, and then you're on the shelf for months at a time.
Taz did not appear on the pay-per-view. When Samoa Joe comes out and he's wearing a towel over his head like Taz, a lot of people think that must be a tease. Maybe they're going to put Taz in the mentor role. But really, we've tried that 3 times with Samoa Joe, if you count Taz. We tried it once with Marcus Davis and once with Kevin Nash. And Meltzer would say Taz no doubt would have gotten a big reaction in Philadelphia, but there was a clause in his contract with WWE that even with it being expired and him being a free agent, that because he was an announcer, he has a certain period of time before he can appear on a rival group's television show. Is that the way you remember this? You wanted to use Taz here in Philly, but just couldn't?
I think it was too premature. I think that was the narrative that the sheets wrote. I think we were well aware of that, because when did Taz start at TNA?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit down the line, quite a bit down the line.
I just find that fascinating that he didn't debut here. Like, maybe it had to be the contract. I'm not sure, but
yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the main event. It's for the world title. Mick Foley is going to pin Sting in 15 minutes and 55 seconds to win the title. And it was announced that you could win by pin, submission, or escaping the cage. At no point on television was any of this advertised, according to Dave. Both are getting a mixed reaction. Foley's punching himself over and over, opening up a pre-existing cut. He's bleeding heavily before the match even starts over the right eye. And the crowd is booing Foley when he's using the Scorpion Deathlock on Sting, like he's stealing the other guy's move. It's really a fun match, and it's a big highlight for Mick Foley to win the world title one last time in an era where I don't think a lot of people would have maybe considered it. Was this always the plan? Did the plans change because the Mafia got hot? Did it change when you found out Foley was writing a book and you thought, man, this will be a nice piece of PR and really add to the book? Or just talk me through this.
It was kind of a chartered course. I don't want to say we decided it in October, but he was writing the book and fairy tale ending and just the whole kind of everybody rolling in the same direction. It was, the blow off in multiple ways. The book, the pay-per-view, that story, again, now Mick's and now Sting's without the title opens up I'll call it the main event Mafia, the next iteration, not iteration, it gave more abilities. When Sting's the champion, you have to focus on that, the possibilities. It was the charted course we set on.
There was a response when he won. As a reminder, this was in Philadelphia. I think most people, myself included, would have assumed the crowd would have went bananas for Foley here. Why do you think that he didn't get the explosive reaction?
2 reasons. They followed a tag match that absolutely tore the house down.
Yeah,
with 3D, and then a weapons 25-minute cage match with
all the star power in the world,
all those guys in there, and you follow it with a single. It's just, you know, it's tough. I mean, Dynasty, Swerve and Joe did a fantastic job. It's just freaking hard. It is what it is. I think that's one thing, but I think that sets above all of it, Sting was positioned and forever will be. You can't make Sting. He's just, he'll never be the true heel. He just wasn't from day one. We didn't cast him as that. And I think that plays into it as well. You know, Mick not beating a pure heel. There was some Sting fans still in the house that probably went, I wanted my guy Sting to win. I think those are the 2 factors.
When it was all said and done, do you think Mick was disappointed?
No, I think a seasoned guy who really, really understands the business, understands, yes, it's important to have a great reaction in the house, but it's not the end all be all, because there can be so many factors. I mean, a ref can be early or late on a count once or twice during the match. And Conrad, you'd be surprised how it can throw off kind of the rhythm and the build of a match. There can be a fight can break out in the crowd, or lights. I mean, there's 1,000 things that can just kind of throw off the live crowd reaction.